We are now ready to conclude the second week of our lecture, and in this week we have discussed Python programming. In particular, we talked about pseudocode and then implementing that pseudocode in a digital computer using Python language. This language itself is not very important, but the implementation in a computer is important. So if you are comfortable with some other language, feel free to do so. But pseudocode, you have to understand very clearly, because no matter what language you will be using, you need to write pseudocode. In case of Python programming, Python itself is not sufficient for scientific computing. Therefore, we need some additional packages. And we have talked about two particular packages. One is NumPy for array-based calculation and for vectorized calculation. And then we have talked about matplotlib for plotting our results. Now, once you go through all the lectures, you will find your assignment for this week. Your assignment involves certain questions from pseudocode and some questions from array operations. If you are not using Python, you may be using something else, but the array operations remains very similar as in NumPy. So you should be able to do all the assignments irrespective of which language you are using. In a nutshell, what we have learned this week is something about algorithms first. And algorithms are a set of instructions that we give a digital computer for solving a problem using very simple arithmetic operations such as additions or multiplications. And these algorithms are expressed in plain text. It is expressed also in computer program. And in between, there is a particular form that we have learned, and it is very important for this course. That is pseudocode, which is a program-like text. And it doesn't require knowledge of any particular programming language to write a pseudocode. Pseudocode must have these three components: input, output, and control flow. And by control flow, what we mean, especially in case of Python, as well as it is true for other languages, control flow involves this if-else blocks, as well as for and while loops. This if-else block does not do any repeating calculation, unless of course it is nested within this for or while loop, then it's a different story. But otherwise it is not for repeating calculation. It operates over certain conditional statement. On the other hand, this for and while loops, they will repeat based on certain comparison operator or based on certain iterable objects. Together, this input, output, and control flow, they will create the pseudocode, as well as eventually they will create computer program in any language. And as I mentioned, that Python is not essential for this course, but pseudocodes are essential for this course. So please see all these lectures. Even if you are not using Python, please go through all the lectures carefully. Just like Python, in any programming language, this 1D and 2D as well as higher dimensional arrays are there. But this 1D and 2D arrays, they represent these vectors and matrices as in linear algebra. And in the example you have seen in previous lectures, that where this vector, matrix and their products, their different operations, they are executed using this array data structure in Python. And similar data structure you can also use if you are using any other language. Now, in next week, you will see certain basics of linear algebra, which will come from these vectors and matrix that we have discussed now this week. And then we'll talk about the most important problem of linear algebra, important for engineers, that is the solution of Ax equals b problems, that is the solution of simultaneous linear equations. How do you solve them? what are the algorithms and how do you incorporate that algorithm in a computer. I'll show you using Python language, but you may be using something else. That's not a problem. Now, to use this week's material, like this linear algebra and solution of Ax equals b problem, my suggestion is that you finish up your this week's assignments as quickly as possible, and then only you come to next week linear algebra lectures. Because in the assignments you will see that there are certain elementary operations involving vectors and matrices, and I want you to brush up all this before you enter into this lectures on linear algebra. So that's all for this week. Thank you, and I'll see you in next session.